Can you tell me why people like Star Wars? It never got my creative juices flowing. Luke and Vader, Han and Chewie. No comment. With May the 4th coming up, I began to reflect on Star Wars, not that, but why I bounced off of it, and yet I love Outlaw Star, an anime that also has Force-abusing Sith, a hot-headed gunslinger with a mountain of debt, and spaceship dogfights that will leave you going, Yahoo! It turns out Outlaw Star and Star Wars have more in common than you'd think. Outlaw Star premiered to American audiences in January 2001 on Cartoon Network. But don't go thinking that means it's rated G. This version was heavily edited.
Oh, Iris, it's okay now.
Huh, is that why you have your hand on her ass?
As for the plot, if you take a hypermatter reactor and power it with Han's origin story, infuse it with a crew stealing the plans to the Death Star, and aim it at that one exhaust port, you've got Outlaw Star. And all without the need for 2 more movies just to blow the MacGuffin up one more time. The anime opens on Sentinel, the Rust Belt version of Tatooine's Tunisia vibe. Gene Starwind, our Han Solo type, is found boozing in a bar when he's confronted by a former bounty's brother looking for revenge. Like Han, Gene shot first. And also like Han, he's got a smart mouth.
So if you didn't have a gun, would you run away?
Only when I don't have one.
Swap out Chewie for the boy genius, Jim Hawking, and you'll see how our dynamic duo scrape a living out of the dirt. Which is why when they get a lucrative job offer that leads them to working with the infamous outlaw Lando Calrissian, Hot Ice Hilda, and pissing off a few Tau wizards at the same time, they begin to ask some deeper questions.
Tell me, Hilda, what's in the trunk?
Which culminates in the anime's Lando and Han engaging in the sexy time the Star Wars fans never canonically got. And to the Outlaw Star, a ship designed to reach the galactic ley line, rumored to have enough treasure, knowledge, and power to take over the galaxy. And if the pirates of the Space Forces want it, why not some outlaws? But where are the aliens? Take your pick. We've got alien Mike Wazowskis, or Corbinites, Silgarians, or how Jurassic World ended on an alien planet. And for anyone missing their carnivorous teddy bears or their zaddy, the Kataro, jingoistic therianthropes that, like real cats, think they own everything and are better than you. Well, how about droids? Most ships come with an AI, but the Outlaw Star comes equipped with the state-of-the-art Gilliam system. He's R2-D2 but equipped with C-3PO's stick. You know, the stick in his gold-plated butt.
Pardon me, but if I am not mistaken, wasn't that an indirect insult?
And what's another 70s sci-fi reference? Let's throw in a Cylon for navigation. If you're a fan of Jedi, though, they're pretty much all gone. You might catch a glimpse of them, though, through Gene's trump card, a caster, named because it quite literally shoots force bullets. Kylo Ren would be happy, though. There seem to be plenty of Sith stand-ins to go around. Or maybe not. But I think it's where the 2 series diverge that I start to favor Outlaw Star over Star Wars. Specifically, the format, the tone, and the style. Let's start with format. I've always been one to favor a series over a movie. It allows the artist to really dig into some niche stories, like a good side quest in a video game. The Mandalorian exists for a reason. Outlaw Star only has 2 extra hours of runtime on the original Star Wars trilogy, and I feel like the anime covers more about the world and all the people in it than Star Wars does within episodes 4 through 6. And this may be in part because most episodes begin with either a minute of universal exposition or a quasi-philosophical bumper. Anyone that watched Toonami in the early 2000s will remember the dulcet baritone of Bo Billingsley.
A boy has the right to dream. There are endless possibilities stretched out before him.
These opening monologues cut to the thematic heart of the series, too. Yes, the anime has some goofy situations and dialogue, just like Star Wars.
I love you.
I know.
But Outlaw Stars are more, adult?
What's the story with him?
Aw, it's nothing. Gene's just a space cherry.
Setting aside Jim's dirty jokes, the anime walks this line of moral ambiguity that the original Star Wars frankly doesn't. The Empire is bad, the Rebels are good, Jabba is gross and Leia is sexy. Oh god damn it, guys! You say one thing to your editors in confidence. Outlaw Star gets into the nitty-gritty of the final frontier, the new Wild West. Yeah, Han kills Greedo, just like Gene killed Rob when we first met him. But over and over, the morality and cost of killing, financial and emotional, are explored. When those spaceships explode in combat, it's not clones, robots, and no-name aliens piloting them. They're almost universally Terrans, like us. And it's easy to dismiss them as pirates or enemy outlaws, until you remember that the reason Gene is initially scared of space is because his father shoved him into an escape pod before being exploded himself. And that kind of visceral combat is only enhanced by the iconic spacecraft of Outlaw Star, the Grappler ship. The anime subverts the battle tactics of Star Wars, where Jedi block blaster fire with their lightsabers and close the gap. Gene prefers to use firearms and keep his distance, and instead of salvos of blaster fire in space, outlaws and pirates alike favor mobility and melee in their dogfight, sporting claws, axes, and even multiple arms. So, General Grievous, in space. For me, this is a more practical and brutal way of doing business than duels with fancy welding torches. And the censorship that Cartoon Network had to use to air the series proves my point. Gene headshots someone in the first scene, after all. Quite a bit of dialogue had to be altered as well.
Didn't I tell you not to try anything stupid?
Bite me! That was just some stupid bluff. Shut up! That was just some stupid bluff.
I mean, do you think Jim's line about popping space cherries would be considered Y7? But it's the sexuality and perceived nudity that required a stroke of Cartoon Network's creative genius. Clothing was overlaid on the original animation, and there was even an episode that was removed entirely. Why? Well, the majority of the episode is dedicated to this hot spring planet and a couple of pervy, retired Jedi wanting some nudie pics to slide into their DMs. There was one minor plot line left on the cutting room floor, though. The reason these dirty birds want Gene to obtain these illicit pics is in exchange for some magic bullets. Specifically, a couple of rare shells that the audience hasn't seen yet. Then again, Gene whips these shells out of nowhere the entire series. So, if you're not into fan service, you too can skip episode 23. But if I had to pick a singular reason I bounce off of Star Wars, I mean, if you're going to force me to say it, consider this payback for the Leia jokes. Are we even? There's really only two reasons I think the Force is problematic. What it's borrowed from in the real world, and then how it's used in the story. It wasn't until college that I put the two together, but the Force is just a bastardization of the Tao, an ancient Chinese philosophy and religion. And I'm just barely past being an ignorant rube when it comes to the Tao, but the short version is basically that the cosmic Tao is an inherent force that governs the universe in fluctuations. Kinda like the Force, or the more familiar Taijutsu, the yin-yang symbol. Yin and yang are like darkness and light, cold and heat, dichotomies that cannot exist without the other. In the original Star Wars, we see yin and yang at odds with one another. Obi-Wan the Jedi and Darth Vader the Sith, each embracing their own respective side. And yes, several of the newer series and books dive more into the balance of the Force. But I think Outlaw Star gets it right from the start. The Tao Masters literally have yin and yang emblazoned on their outfits, and they abuse the Tao to manifest powers much like the Jedi and the Sith. Obviously, pirates that take over territory and wantonly steal and murder people are generally bad. But the anime has several moments where pirates are more nuanced than Long John Silver in space. The Space Forces aren't ultimately good either. They're rife with corruption, and the outlaws are probably the most in line with the Tao, seeking the freedom and adventure in space. As for the way the Force is used in Star Wars, in many ways it's Deus Machina. Done hanging out in Cloud City? Use the Force to telepathically call an Uber. Need to provide motivation to push a character forward? Force ghosts. From lightning bending to telekinesis, the Force seems to be a universal solvent. So why don't the Jedi fight smarter? I was at a bachelor party and the groom-to-be wanted to watch the latest Ahsoka episode. It was his party, so we did. While watching this fight on a cliff, we see a 60-pound boulder thrown like it's a baseball, the baddie's apprentice tossed into a stone pillar like a rag doll. I mean, you guys know there's a cliff right there, right? One force push and we could do away with all this spinny cosplay fighting. I mean, even if they can't force push each other, there were several times where Batty and Ahsoka were stunned enough to be run through. And I'll even concede that maybe they're trying to be Batman and avoid murder, but if she's just after the space map, rather than having to physically grab it, could she not use the Force on it? Surely the Orby thing can't dispel telekinesis.
There are some who call me Tim.
Admittedly, the original trilogy had less of this, though in 1977 this was considered to be an exciting duel. And that's not to say that Outlaw Star's animation doesn't have some wonky moments. I mean, it was made in 1998. But Star Wars predates CGI. The effects were basically models, blue screen, and layered frames, which was incredibly clever and revolutionary in filmmaking for the time. But if you've only seen the remasters, find a VHS player and go watch the original. Then come talk to me about the quality of 90s anime. Outlaw Star balances the use of technology, adventure in the final frontier, and the still yet to be understood metaphysics of the universe for 25 episodes of space operatic fun. Well, 26 episodes, if you want to see some muscle mommy cat girl skin. Aw, crap.